My sister was very young at the time, so I tried to be there for her to the best of my abilities. Understanding why our parents weren't always there for her like other parents was difficult, so I would just always dodge those questions. But as she grew older, it became more and more difficult for me to avoid those questions, and even my grandparents started finding it hard not to answer. Eventually, when she was around 14, we told her the truth. After that, she started behaving in a very confused way with our parents whenever they would visit. By then, their business had started doing well, and they could have easily moved back, but they chose to stay away because they had already built a life for themselves elsewhere. They didn't see the point of coming back, believing that we would be able to handle our lives on our own. After my sister found out about everything, she would try to act aloof when our parents would visit, but occasionally, she would slip right back into her old behavior around them. I didn't even blame her. It must have been confusing for her as a kid. Anyway, just like my parents, I had also built a life away from them, and gradually, I made my peace with their absence. I graduated high school, graduated college, and got my first job, all without them. Unfortunately, I lost my grandpa when I was 22 and my grandma when I was 26. The only thing I'm thankful for is that they were at least here to witness me graduate high school and get my first job. By the time I lost both of them, I was doing reasonably well enough in life. Even my sister was 18 and an adult when our grandma passed away. Our maternal grandparents had passed away long ago when I was in my early teens, so we were completely on our own after that. But I would honestly say that I had been raising my sister long before our grandparents passed away. Even though it was my parents who would always send money back home for us, I was the one who was actually raising her. Let's be real, our grandparents were pretty old, and half the time, they didn't even know what was going on in our lives. They were just doing the best they could, but I was the one who was actually there for my sister. So the fact that she eventually picked our parents over me was all the more embarrassing and hurtful. My sister is 24 now, and she got engaged a couple of months ago after dating her boyfriend for the past 3 years. I had always been very supportive of the relationship right from the beginning. In fact, I think I was the one who actually encouraged her to pursue him after her last breakup. Her ex had broken her heart, and she was afraid of saying yes to her fiancé when he asked her out. But I had pushed her to give it a try, and here is where they ended up. But I guess that wasn't enough to warrant an invitation to her wedding. In fact, she even told me a couple of weeks ago that I shouldn't be expecting an invitation, since she didn't really want me at her wedding. And the reason she told me she didn't want me at her wedding was something I couldn't have imagined even in my wildest dreams. It was because she was basically picking our parents over me, like I already mentioned. For context, our parents moved back here just 6 months ago. They think the business can run on its own now, and their constant monitoring is no longer required, so they have moved back. But I really think they moved back because they were bored of their lives there. The first thing they did was try to rebuild a connection with us. My sister, who I raised all her life, told me to stay away from her wedding because she was embarrassed to admit I raised her. And the reason she told me she didn't want me at her wedding was something I couldn't have imagined even in my wildest dreams. It was because she was basically picking our parents over me. I smiled through my tears and said okay. But on her wedding day, karma hits hard. Her groom's speech exposed her and our parents, before canceling the wedding. Now she wants me to come to her rescue. I, a 32-year-old female, was not invited to my sister's wedding, which took place 3 days ago. It was really disheartening because I believe I was the one who had pretty much raised my sister ever since we were very young. She's about 8 years younger than me, and we basically grew up without our parents. When I was 10 years old, my parents just randomly woke up one day and decided that they were sick of being our parents. It wasn't very surprising, since even when I was really young, it was apparent that they treated me very differently than other parents treated their kids. They always maintained a distance from me and my sister, as they weren't really interested in building a relationship with us. I tried really hard for a long time to get close to them, but it never really worked. They were always too busy for us. We had sitters to take care of us, and at other times, our grandparents. My sister was just 2 years old when our parents decided that we would be better off living with our grandparents, my dad's parents, on a more permanent basis. This decision was influenced by their starting a business together, but for that, they had to move away. Both my parents were working at the time, but I guess the idea of being partners in a business really appealed to them, so they decided to take my dad's coworker up on that offer. It worked out for them, since they are doing pretty well now and have been for many years. While it was great for them on the financial and work front, they gave up their family for this. My dad could have easily chosen to take his daughters with him, but he decided to leave us behind with our grandparents. It was just him and my mother who moved away to help set up the business. I was used to my parents ignoring me, but for them to completely abandon me and my sister and leave us with our aging grandparents was something nobody had seen coming, not even my grandparents. They were not happy about this arrangement, and they tried really hard to fight with my dad and get him to take us with them. But he insisted that he wouldn't be able to take out the time for us, and we would just be another burden on him, which he couldn't afford because he and my mother needed to channel all their energy into the new business. My grandparents never told me about any of this and tried to put on a happy face, but they forgot that I had ears. When they were fighting, they never really bothered to keep things quiet. So, at a very young age, I knew what their priorities were. At the age of 10, I decided that I was never going to count on them for anything in my entire life. After they left, it wasn't like they were out of my life for good, but they would still come back during the holidays. The only difference was that after they left me with my grandparents, I decided not to have any expectations from them. Whenever they would visit, I would also maintain my distance from them. So, I think it's very obvious that I had a very strange relationship with my parents. Her groom's speech exposed her and our parents, before canceling the wedding. Now she wants me to come to her rescue. Obviously, I didn't encourage that at all, and I would try to spend as little time as I could with them. I treated them the same way they had been treating me for the past 3 decades. I acted distant, and I would always tell them I was busy whenever they tried to make plans with me. Eventually, they took the hint and stopped trying to bother me. But that's not what happened with my sister. Since she and I have been living separately ever since she graduated college, she had a very different attitude towards our parents and decided to welcome them into her life. Both her fiancé and I were kind of iffy about this idea because our parents suck at being parents. Let's not forget that they have been absent from our lives forever. It felt a little weird that she was allowing them to just waltz back in like nothing had ever happened. But she believed that everyone deserved a second chance, and since she was about to get married, she wasn't about to act all vengeful and let that chance slip by. I found it a little weird, but it was her call to make, so I didn't question her much about it. I'll admit, I did feel a little betrayed that she was welcoming them back into her life so openly, but I tried not to let it bother me too much because I really didn't think it would take away from my importance in her life. However, that's exactly what happened. She started spending a lot of time with our parents, and lately, it felt like she had started avoiding me on purpose. She started acting like she was too busy, and every time I asked to meet her, she would tell me she was too busy preparing for the wedding. Even then, I tried not to doubt her too much because, to me, even the idea of her choosing our parents over me was just absurd. But I could no longer stay in denial when a few weeks ago she came over to my place. After some small talk, she told me that the invitations were going to be sent out in a couple of days, and she told me not to expect one. I was obviously shocked and thought it was a joke until she told me she was serious. She explained that with our parents involved, it would just be too awkward. Apparently, she was embarrassed about the fact that I had basically raised her. Although our family knew about it, her fiancé's extended family didn't really know the whole situation with us and our parents, and she wanted to keep it private. She believed it wouldn't be possible with me at the wedding, so she told me she would have another ceremony with just our family and close friends, but this one, she wanted me to sit out. I honestly didn't understand the logic behind any of this and told her that if she had an issue talking about her life with her fiancé's family, then I would just keep my mouth shut. But it wasn't as if his extended family wasn't going to find out eventually since they had been dating for a long time, and his parents and close family members already knew. She got agitated when I suggested solutions and told me that she was embarrassed because I had been more of a mom to her than our actual mother, and she couldn't have two moms at the wedding as it would raise a lot of questions. Even then, I struggled to make sense of what she was saying. She believed that my presence at the wedding would lead to a lot of embarrassment and drama for her since our parents would also be there. Instead of not inviting our parents, she decided to disinvite me. I know I should have freaked out, yelled at her, or kicked her out of my house, but I was so heartbroken that all I could do was tell her it was fine and smile through my tears. She seemed happy that I was being understanding and assured me that she would have a private ceremony later on. Then, she left. It was incredibly insensitive of her not to realize how upset I was. I decided not to speak to her after that and muted her everywhere, so I wouldn't have to talk to her, even if she contacted me. I also muted her fiancé because I assumed he was in on this and had agreed to it. For the past few weeks, I had no contact with either of them. I was taken aback when she called me on her wedding day, crying and telling me to come and save her. Despite having no contact with her for weeks, I was concerned and immediately called her fiancé, but he didn't respond. I wanted to go to her, but I wanted to make sure I was actually needed. So, I called her bridesmaids, and thankfully, her maid of honor picked up and explained everything to me. Apparently, her fiancé had no idea she told me not to attend the wedding. He didn't find out until the day before the wedding. Nobody else knew I wasn't invited. Everyone had been asking about my absence from the pre-wedding events, but she lied and said I wasn't feeling well enough to attend and that I would be there on the day of. When her fiancé found out the truth, he flipped out. She told him she didn't invite me because our parents wouldn't be fine with it, and since they were financing the wedding, she couldn't afford to go against them. She claimed it broke her heart too, but she had to invite them. She explained that they were not only funding the wedding but also the honeymoon and other expenses for the rest of her life since she had given them an opportunity to be involved in her life. Essentially, our parents had bought her out, and she thought it was a reasonable explanation. However, her fiancé was not pleased with that. The way her maid of honor and literally every other guest at the wedding found out what was going on was because her fiancé decided to make a speech. He exposed what she had done before canceling the wedding and walking out. He told everyone how she had become a sellout because our parents had suddenly shown up after not caring about her for their entire lives, and now, after waving some cash in front of her face, she had forgotten everything I had done for her. Since she could easily do it to her own sister, he didn't think it would be difficult for her to do it to him at some point, so he no longer thought it was a good idea to marry her. He walked away from the altar, and my sister couldn't do anything but sob uncontrollably. It was even more humiliating because she had been showing off our parents the entire time. At a pre-wedding event, she talked them up, presenting them as the best parents in the world who had always been there for her. The people who had known her forever were obviously shocked but said nothing. Eventually, the truth came out. About half an hour after he left, refusing to return even after his parents requested him to, my sister called me. Our parents couldn't stand the awkward position and left too. She told me to come and save her, saying I was the only one who could fix this, and that she had learned her lesson. Now, she just wanted me back, as well as her fiancé.